Hello, good morning. How's everybody today? I haven't done a video in a while, so I thought I'd catch up with everybody and see how everyone's doing. Happy New Year. It is now 2 weeks into January 2024. I was hoping the year would be a bit better, but so far 2 weeks has been a little bit disappointing. But saying that, on Friday, I was up at Romsey meeting MP Caroline Noakes, talking about domestic violence and the way that the police are handling my case and other cases. Then I was at the court and stuff, so it was quite a very eventful day, and I got the result I needed, so that's perfect, amazing. It's taken me 4 years to get this, and finally I feel like somebody's listening and people are actually hearing me now, and this person is a perpetrator and needs to be stopped. And thank God, alhamdulillah, the result was in my favor, so that's perfect. But when it comes to coercive control, what really shocks me and surprises me that in 21st century Britain, you're a British citizen, you have a British passport, I've got a black passport, I've been in this country for 4 decades now, paid my taxes, I've worked since I was 14 years old, A-star student, A student, distinctions throughout, amazing, handling of English and so on, better than most people I meet, and yet the police treat me like dirt. It's almost like dumb Asian doesn't know anything, we'll just say whatever and she'll believe us. Like, they tell me about the data protection and they can't give me access to my records or the CCTV or the police dash cam, the body cam. I'm not allowed to know where they went looking for me, because apparently I was missing one day and they went all over Southampton looking for me, but they're not allowed to tell me the places they went looking for me and whose doors they've been knocking on looking for me, even though I keep bumping into people that say that they've spoken to the police and am I okay, and they're worried, and my next door neighbour thinks I'm a felon now because the police were looking for me and stuff. But I'm not allowed to be party to that information because it's against data protection laws, apparently. I'm GDPR trained. Like, when I studied GDPR, which was a couple of years ago, what I knew from there was that only I have the right to have access to my information. Nobody else has access to my information without my permission. So even the police officer that I was talking to, you don't have right to see my information unless I give you permission to do that. And I'd like to know what's in my files, and you won't let me have it. And you're citing the Data Protection Act to me. Well, that's not going to wash with me. Coercive control. There's a Coercive Control Law 2015, 2020, 2023. And yet every encounter I have with a police officer, I have to explain the Coercive Control Law to them, explain how to build a coercive control case. It is through a pattern of behaviour. You get together all the incidents that have happened. You don't isolate each incident, minimalise it to nothing, and then say, sorry, that's not a criminal offence, sorry, that doesn't pass the threshold for the CPS, it won't have enough points. You are meant to build a case with all of the incidents that have happened. They all amount to coercive control. There is ongoing coercive control, post-separation abuse, financial abuse, verbal abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse. This man has completely isolated me. He has turned my family, my friends, my children, the community, people at the school, the imams, the school teachers. He's turned everybody against me with his puppy dog eyes, his green eyes, his lovely face, his smile, his calm demeanour, and they all believe him over me. Classic Gabby Petito situation. I have severe and documented CPTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, autism, ADHD. I don't present as a classic victim. I am fully made up, catwalking through Southampton, and yet at the same time my husband could be sending me horrible messages, triggering me, bullying me, threatening me, all sorts, and I'll walk around with a smile on my face because that's who I am. I don't have to qualify to be a human being or to be different or to be who I am, because this is how I am, but to be mistreated and treated with contempt and refused services, which are basic services as a human being that I am entitled to, protection from the police officers. The school need to put children first and the safety and well-being of children and vulnerable people first, which they refuse to do. The mosques support a perpetrator over a victim. They give the perpetrator the keys to the mosque, even though the perpetrator is preying on vulnerable women and girls and makes lewd comments about school children, about the imam's wife. is a porn addict. My 6-year-old son has weird affiliations with naked women. You know, I have to refer my son for psychotherapy now, because at 6 years old, I cannot put a music video on in front of him because he will be staring at the naked women or half naked women or anything. You know, if he sees a bit of skin, it's just heartbreaking to think my 6-year-old son might be addicted to porn because his dad is a porn addict. And police and social services and schools and imams do not think that is a problem. Do not think that the man is a perpetrator. Blame me for everything. Believe his lies that I'm the perpetrator in this situation, not him. And yet he goes to the school last Tuesday and kicks off at 4:15. He's screaming and shouting at me. I have to go into the back office and call the police. The police tell me they're there to arrest him, but then he goes off scot-free and they haven't arrested him. So what happened between the half an hour before when you spoke to me and reassured me that you're here to arrest him, and then half an hour later he's walking out scot-free? And suddenly I get a reply back on Friday, and this incident happened on Tuesday, and I was told I'd hear from them on Wednesday. Friday I get an email back from this police officer saying, me and my sergeant have discussed this at length, and we believe that this is not a coercive controlling situation. You need to go back to family court. This is not a criminal offence. We cannot act on it. Well, officer, perhaps you may like to go and speak to Caroline Noakes and find out or explain to her why you refuse to do your job. Perhaps you can read the coercive control laws statutory guidelines again, because I'm not a police officer. I don't have police training. And yet, when I read the statutory guidelines, it told me that coercive control is built from a pattern of abusive behaviours, which may be small, insignificant incidents isolated on their own, but they're not to be isolated. They are meant to be put together as one. You are meant to build a case through witness testimonies, through text messages, emails, through incidents that have happened repeatedly. If an incident happens more than once, that is classed as coercive control. If it only happens once, that's not. The fact that I have been battling with this man with coercive control and domestic violence since 2011 when I married him, and he was arrested 4 times in 2020. He was arrested a time previous to that for trying to grab me by my throat. He's kicked me when I've been 8.5 months pregnant. He's shouted at me, screamed at me, threatened me, bullied me, slapped me, smacked me, grabbed me, pushed me, shoved me, sexually assaulted me. This man is a perpetrator through and through, and yet Hampshire Constabulary believe that this is a domestic between a husband and a wife, and the poor children are being stuck in the middle, passed from pillar to post, but there is no criminal offence going on here. I have no idea which coercive control law you've read, or which training you've had, or which country you're on, or which planet you're on, because in every which way you look at this situation, this is a coercive control situation. He forced me to go to Pakistan in 2019. I had no choice but to go, or he would take my children on their own. And going 3 years previously and seeing how much neglect and abuse that goes on in that horrific house of theirs, I could not allow my children, who were 2 and 6 at the time, to go on their own with this vile human being to be neglected and abused for 3 weeks. So I took it upon myself to put myself in that dangerous situation for my children. And they poisoned me purposefully with dirty, contaminated water. They left me to die with cholera for 3 weeks, to the point that the day before I was due to fly back to England, I collapsed on the floor in their living room, and they are stood above me. My husband, his family are all laughing at me, saying, "Quick, get the doctor or her mum will send in the feds." And they're laughing and joking and finding it funny. Just a couple of hours before that, they made me walk to the town centre, to the plaza, to pick up my clothes from the tailors, because I was travelling back the next day, and all the way there I could barely walk, barely talk. I hadn't eaten or drunk anything for days. I was vomiting and diarrhea and sickness, and these people were refusing me to give me medical treatment. I repeatedly asked a sister, "Please, sister, can I go to the doctors? Can you take me to the hospital? I really need to see somebody. I'm really not well." Barely being able to talk, laboured breathing, And this woman ignores me all the way to the tailor's and all the way back, and she tells me, go and put your clothes on and try it on because you're going tomorrow. I went to the bedroom and I collapsed on the bed, not being able to function, not being able to talk, not being able to move. And then the niece came, who's lovely, and she offered to make me a cup of coffee. And I said, Lebby, I'm not well. I need to go to the hospital. I need to see a doctor. I'm really not well. She said, come back up and we'll speak to them. I went back up to the living room because it's above where I was sleeping, and I collapsed in the doorway. And only then, after laughing and joking and mocking me a bit more, did they then take me to the A&E department at Abbottabad Infirmary. And the consultant was appalled by my presentation. She said, why is she in such a bad state? And the two sister-in-laws that were with me were trying to minimize it and trying to dismiss it and say, no, she's fine. When the consultant asked me in Urdu, diarrhea and sickness, one of the sister-in-laws said, oh no, just sickness. And I said, I've had both diarrhea and sickness. And she said, she was asking questions and they were answering for me. I could answer, I could speak in Urdu, I understand Urdu, and I replied. And they were trying to cover it up. They were trying to pretend I was fine. I was in and out of consciousness, I don't know for how many hours, on an IV drip, getting IV antibiotics and saline because I hadn't eaten and drunk for days. I was completely emaciated. I was breathing very shallow, very laboured breaths, my last few breaths. And had I not got to the A&E on time, I wouldn't be here today making this video. My son Azan had cryptosporidium, infections from dirty conditions and dirty water. His food was stolen. He was surviving on a tiny banana and a sip of orange juice each day. Completely emaciated, looked like he'd been in a concentration camp, and that's within 3 weeks of being in Pakistan. Zach was 2 years old. He had non-stop diarrhea and sickness the whole 3 weeks. He had a sore bottom that was bright red that he would scream when I went to change his nappy. And this vile excuse of a human being that calls himself their dad allowed and participated in me and my children nearly dying and being poisoned and being refused medical treatment, being kept trapped in that house. I wanted to go and stay in the village. I wanted to go and stay in a hotel. I wanted to stay with one of the relatives. I wanted to come back home, and they refused to allow me to do any of those things, even though people were offering for us to stay with them. Even at the village, I said, I don't care about running water and modern amenities. I would feel safer and happier, and my children would be happier in the fresh air of the country than living in this disgusting, disgraceful 3-story house of marble floors and, ornate ceilings. Absolutely disgusting and dirty, and a thick layer of grime all over every single surface, including the kitchen. There are poo stains all over the walls at eye level, outside the wall I'm sleeping in, the room I'm sleeping in. There was mold all over the walls where we were sleeping. My 2-year-old son fell out of the bed about 3 times on that hard marble floor. It's just disgusting and disgraceful. Like, I'd give nappies to the children, to throw away, because they had a communal rubbish dump a few feet away from their back door. So I would say, can you throw that out in the bin, please, while I wash my hands? And they'd just chuck it. So I'd walk out of the back door and find a trail of dirty, pooey nappies leading all the way up to the communal rubbish dump. It was like Hansel and Gretel, but without the chocolates. I mean, I don't know whether to laugh or cry. These people think they are royalty. They act like they're royalty. They treated me like I was the pauper who turned up at Buckingham Palace to marry the prince. And their house is absolutely disgusting and disgraceful. The house is full of women. And bearing in mind, in Bangladesh, India and Pakistan, the main job of the women of the house is to cook, clean and look after the children. And they did none of those. The children are starving and filthy, walking about in dirty nappies on the floor, crawling about on their own all day, not eating. A 5-year-old is begging and pleading her 10-year-old sister for food because she's starving, and she gets given a milk bottle to drink. The 18-month-old baby is crawling about all day on her own, next to marble staircases that she can fall down. Nobody cares. And her nappy's absolutely covered and filthy and dripping wet, and her mum's out and about in the town centre gallivanting. It's the 10-year-old that comes home from school and has to look after her 2 sisters. It's just disgusting and disgraceful. And these people are highly educated. Apparently they've got university degrees. They don't know the basics. And because I would say these things to them, they poisoned me with cholera and tried to kill me. And then didn't let me go and see a doctor. And then they're laughing and joking at me every time I'm ill. Like, I was feeling sick, and I would actually say to the sister who poisoned me, who happens to be a midwife, and they've all got midwifery and medical training, can I have a pregnancy test, sister? Because I think I might be pregnant. She ignored me. I think I asked her 3 times. She ignored me. I went to lie down and rest at her sister's house, who was the only nice person there. The older sister and the older brother were the only decent people in the house. And I went to lie down in her house. She was not very well off and stuff. Them two are the two that aren't very well off, because they don't take bribery and they don't take underhanded money and steal and rob people. And that poisonous sister comes and gives my 2-year-old son sends him my way and says, go and find your mum. And I'm sleeping because I'm exhausted and ill. And then I ask her, has he eaten? Yeah, he's eaten. Did he have food the night before? Yeah, he did. And then the sister-in-law had told me he'd gone to sleep without any food at 8 o'clock. I woke up in the morning, they were all asleep, all 3 of them, my husband and my 2 children. So I went to the sisters because I need to check my phone out, because there was a problem with my phone, and her husband does phone stuff. And said to the 20 million women in the house, please can you ensure my son eats something, and ask their dad to give them some breakfast, because I'm just at the other sister's house. And this vile creature brings my 2-year-old son to me, and it's 11 o'clock, and he's crying with hunger. And I'm his mum, and I know what cry my son gives. He's crying with hunger, and I'm asking her, has he eaten? And she says yes. We were at the sister's house. I would have given him something to eat, but because she kept insisting he'd eaten, I didn't. So I said, I need to go home and bath him. I'm going to take him home. Went home, asked the dad, has he eaten? No. They told me you fed him. I said, they're all asleep. You were all asleep when I left. I asked Manaz to feed him. He said, no, they told me you fed him. I said, had he eaten the night before? Manaz says, no, he hasn't. He went to sleep at 8 o'clock. He hadn't eaten properly the whole day, because I was ill the whole day. So my son had been starved at 2 for about 24 hours by this vile creature of a woman who happens to have madrasa training. She trained in a madrasa. She is a Hafizul Quran. She is a midwife. She has a education. She's qualified. And she starves a 2-year-old child, poisons his mother with cholera, tries to kill the whole family off. And yet when I questioned her about it, the entire household was against me and supporting her. And it was me stranded in a foreign country, miles away from home, on my own with my 2 children, dying, all 3 of us. And this vile creature of a husband and father shouts and screams and threatens me every time when I go to challenge them, or when I go to stand up for myself or one of the other women that are being beaten or abused or shouted or screamed at. You know, the 8-month pregnant wife was being kicked by her husband, and I was the only one to stop him. The 15-year-old child has been beaten with a stick by his mum, and I'm the only one to stop him, even though everyone has stood around watching her beat him. The 18-month-old baby is crawling about with a dripping wet nappy, and I change her nappy. The 3 children that aren't bathed are bathing with my boys because they haven't bathed. Their hands are covered filthy black. They've not eaten, so they all sit around and I feed them all. The limited food that I took for my children, I was sharing with all their children, because they didn't care. They didn't feed their children. And these people are highly educated, well-off family in Abbottabad, which is meant to be one of the most affluent parts of Pakistan, where the military have their base, where bin Laden was found 5 minutes away from them home. Other than the oldest brother and sister, all of them are well off and, you know, good jobs and good wages, and they are disgusting and despicable people. And the worst one is Satan incarnate. And I am sat outside St. Mary's Church. I was the angel Gabriel at St. Mary's Church at the age of 3 in 1982, and I am sat outside St. Mary's Church today. There is a golden phoenix inside St. Mary's Church. I came here for a meeting, and I'm looking at a stained glass window with an angel warrior with wings, but also a sword, And it's like, this is my picture. This is for me. This is a message for me to say, I am a warrior. I have survived 44 years of every kind of abuse and trauma you can think of. I am still fighting my ex-husband. I am still fighting the system. I am still trying to get justice. I am still trying to get the police officers and the social services and the teachers and the headmaster and the imams and everybody around me to stop systematically abusing me, stop taking advantage, stop treating me like a piece of crap. Actually do their jobs, the jobs that they are paid and hired and trained and sworn in to do, to actually do their jobs without me having to tell them every time what their job is, without me having to explain legislation to them. It is your job. You should know as a police officer what your job is. You should know as a school teacher or a head teacher what your job is, or a welfare officer or a social worker. I should not have to go to every person to explain your job to you, or to explain the legislation to you, or to explain what child protection is, or Children First is, or what VOG is, or Discrimination Act and Mental Health Act and Disability and Equality and Racism Act means. You should know that. You are the qualified, trained, paid professionals, and yet a victim of VOG has to come and tell you and explain to you what your job is. You should be ashamed of yourselves. You should go and find yourselves jobs as dustbin collectors or something, because clearly the jobs that you are paid and trained and hired and sworn to do, you are not doing very well. You are failing miserably at every point, at every stage, at every interaction. Get yourselves a job that you can do, because at the moment the jobs you are supposed to do, you are not doing very well. I will leave it there. Hope everybody is okay. Hope everybody has an amazing year. If I don't see you or speak to you again, take care, look after yourself. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to join Phoenix Rising Still I Rise on Facebook. I am setting up a wellbeing centre for the BAM community, a one-stop shop for all of their needs, which will include a food bank, a clothes bank, a toy bank, warm space, safe space, social isolation, mums and toddlers, employment support, creative support, confidence building, self-esteem for those with mental health, neurodiversities, learning disabilities and trauma affects, for me to help and support them, to set them up in business or employment, so that in 5 years' time, when Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak tell them to go out to work and stop claiming benefits, they will be able to do that more than easily, and we will have a whole group of people in Southampton who are better off and better for it. Take care, speak to you soon, bye.